There's a hidden cost to being human that nobody warns you about. It's not the bills, the responsibilities, or even the heartbreaks. It's the learning tax, the decades we spend figuring out what we could have understood in moments. You see, life comes with patterns, but somehow we're all expected to discover them through years of trial and error. Like archaeologists piecing together fragments of an ancient civilization. Most of us stumble through existence believing that struggle is inevitable. That confusion is normal. That success is mysterious. But what if I told you that everything you're trying to figure out has already been figured out? What if the answers you're seeking are right in front of you, hidden not by complexity, but by simplicity itself? I've spent the better part of 4 decades learning lessons that I could teach you in the next 20 minutes. And here's the thing that keeps me up at night, thinking about my younger self, about all of you watching this. Most people will never get this manual. They'll spend their entire lives playing a game where the rules were never explained, wondering why everyone else seems to have it figured out, but you're here, which means you're different. You're ready to see what most people miss. So let's start with the foundation that changes everything. Your reality isn't fixed. I know that sounds obvious, but stay with me. Most people live as if their circumstances, their capabilities, their very identity is set in stone. They operate from what I call the fixed mindset trap, believing that who they are today is who they'll always be. But here's the truth that transforms everything. Your brain is redesigning itself every single day based on what you feed it. Think about this for a moment. The thoughts you think most often literally reshape your neural pathways. The conversations you have most frequently rewire your mental circuitry. The content you consume daily rebuilds your worldview. You're not just living your life, you're programming yourself, whether you realize it or not. Most people program themselves accidentally. They consume whatever information floats their way, engage in whatever conversations happen around them, think whatever thoughts arise randomly. It's like setting your GPS to random and then wondering why you never reach your destination. But once you understand that you're the programmer, everything changes. Here's where it gets interesting. Your mental programming doesn't just affect your thoughts, it determines what opportunities you can even see. Two people can walk down the same street and one sees problems while the other sees possibilities. It's not luck, it's mental programming. We literally see the world through the lens of our accumulated thoughts and beliefs. This brings us to something that blew my mind when I first understood it. The difference between successful people and everyone else isn't talent, luck, or even hard work. It's their relationship with uncertainty. Most people treat uncertainty as the enemy, something to be avoided, minimized, eliminated. But successful people have discovered something profound. Uncertainty is where opportunities live. Think about every major breakthrough in your life. I bet it happened when you stepped into uncertainty, when you made a decision without knowing exactly how it would turn out. That's not coincidence. That's the pattern. Comfort zones are called that for a reason. They're comfortable, but nothing grows in the comfort zone. Growth requires discomfort, and most people will do anything to avoid discomfort. Here's what's funny about human nature. We'll pay thousands of dollars for a gym membership to deliberately make our bodies uncomfortable because we understand that physical growth requires resistance. But when it comes to mental and emotional growth, we avoid discomfort like it's poison. We've got it completely backward. The people who figure this out early have an unfair advantage. While everyone else is avoiding discomfort, they're running toward it. While others are seeking certainty, they're making friends with uncertainty. It's like they're playing by different rules, and in a way, they are now. Let's talk about something that controls your entire life, but remains completely invisible to most people. Your attention. In an economy built around capturing and selling. Human attention. The ability to control your own focus has become the ultimate competitive advantage. Yet most people treat their attention like it's infinite and worthless. Here's a thought experiment that changed my entire approach to life. What if you only had 100 hours of focused attention for the rest of your life? How would you spend them? What would you stop giving your attention to immediately? What would become your absolute priority? Now, here's the kicker. You actually do have limited attention. You're just pretending it's unlimited. Every moment you spend scrolling mindlessly is a moment you're not spending on what actually matters to you. Every time you let your attention get hijacked by someone else's agenda, you're literally trading pieces of your life for nothing in return. When you truly understand this, you start treating your attention like the precious resource it is. But here's where most people get stuck. They think attention management willpower about being more disciplined. That's like trying to diet in a house full of junk food. Possible, but unnecessarily difficult. Smart attention management is about environment design. It's about creating conditions where focus is the path of least resistance, the most successful. People I know aren't necessarily more disciplined than others. They've just created environments where distraction is harder than focus. They've designed their physical spaces, their digital environments, even their relationships to support sustained attention rather than fragment it. This connects to something that most people completely misunderstand about how change actually works. We've been told that changing your life requires massive action, dramatic shifts, complete overhauls. But that's not how lasting change happens. Real transformation comes through what I call the aggregation of marginal gains. Here's the math that nobody teaches you. If you improve by just 1% every day for a year, you'll be 37 times better by the end of that year. 1%? That's the difference between drinking 7 glasses of water at 8, between walking 9,000 steps and walking 9,090 steps. Tiny, almost imperceptible improvements that compound into extraordinary results. But we're addicted to the dramatic. We want the complete life makeover, the overnight success, the breakthrough moment. Meanwhile, the people who actually transform their lives are making tiny adjustments daily. They understand something profound. Success isn't an event, it's a process. Most people give up on change because they're measuring it wrong. They expect linear progress in a world that operates exponentially. Growth doesn't happen in a straight line. There are plateaus, setbacks, periods where nothing seems to be happening. But underneath the surface, compound effects are building. The bamboo plant grows underground for years before shooting up 90 feet in 6 weeks. That's not sudden growth. That's compound growth becoming visible. Now let's address something that derails more dreams than any external obstacle. The stories we tell ourselves about what's possible. Every single person operates from a set of beliefs about what they're capable of, what they deserve, what's realistic for someone like them. These beliefs are so fundamental that we don't even recognize them as beliefs. We mistake them for facts. Here's what's wild about human psychology. We have the ability to achieve almost anything we can clearly envision and consistently work toward. Yet most of us live with artificially constrained visions of what's possible. We've been programmed to be realistic, to keep our expectations in check, to not get our hopes up. This programming serves nobody except those who benefit from keeping others small. But what if realistic is actually the most unrealistic approach to life? What if the people who achieve extraordinary things do so precisely because they ignore what others call realistic? Think about every major advancement in human history. None of it was realistic when it was first imagined. The realistic people said it couldn't be done right up until the moment it was done. This doesn't mean living in fantasy. It means understanding the difference between impossible and improbable. Most of what we call impossible is actually just improbable, and improbable things happen all the time. You existing right now is improbable. The odds against your exact genetic combination occurring are literally astronomical, yet here you are. Here's the insight that changed how I approach everything. Instead of asking, is this possible? Ask, what would make this possible? That simple reframe shifts you from passive observer to active architect. It moves you from victim mindset to creator mindset. And creator mindset is where all transformation begins. But creating requires something that most people actively avoid: being wrong. We live in a culture that punishes being wrong, that treats mistakes as failures rather than information. Yet being wrong is the fastest path to being right. Every mistake contains data about what doesn't work, which gets you closer to what does work. The people who learn fastest aren't those who make fewer mistakes. They're those who make mistakes faster and extract lessons more efficiently. They understand that being wrong isn't the opposite of being successful. It's the prerequisite for being successful. You can't learn to ride a bicycle without falling off a few times. First dot, this connects to something that completely revolutionized how I approach challenges. Most people try to avoid problems, but problems are actually gifts. Every problem you face is life asking you to level up. It's presenting you with a skill you need to develop, a strength you need to build, a limitation you need to transcend. When you start seeing problems as growth opportunities rather than inconveniences, everything shifts. You stop being a victim of your circumstances and start being a student of them. You realize that the obstacle isn't blocking the path. The obstacle is the path. Now, let's talk about something that controls every area of your life but remains invisible to most people. Your internal conversation. The average person has 60,000 thoughts per day, and most of them are the same thoughts they had yesterday. They're stuck in mental loops, playing the same internal movies over and over again. Here's what's fascinating about human consciousness. You are not your thoughts, you are the awareness that observes your thoughts. Most people live identified with their mental chatter, believing that every thought that arises is somehow them. But thoughts are just mental events, like clouds passing through the sky. You can observe them without being consumed by them. When you understand this distinction, you develop what might be the most valuable skill in existence, the ability to choose your thoughts rather than be chosen by them. You stop being a passive victim of whatever mental programming is running and start being an active director of your inner experience. This inner work directly impacts your outer results because your external world is always a reflection of your internal world. You can't create an abundant life from a scarcity mindset. You can't build healthy relationships from self-hatred. You can't achieve sustainable success from fear-based motivation. The inner game determines the outer game. But here's where most personal development gets it wrong. It focuses on positive thinking instead of accurate thinking. The goal isn't to think positive thoughts, it's to think useful thoughts. Sometimes the most useful thought is acknowledging that something isn't working. Sometimes growth requires honest assessment rather than optimistic delusion. This brings us to perhaps the most practical insight I can share with you. Your energy management matters more than your time management. We're all obsessed with productivity, with getting more done in less time. But what if the real secret isn't doing more? It's doing the right things when your energy is aligned with the task. Think about it this way. You have different types of energy throughout the day. Creative energy, analytical energy, social energy, physical energy. Most people ignore these natural rhythms and wonder why they feel drained all the time. But when you align your most important work with your peak energy states, everything becomes easier. This requires knowing yourself in a way that most people never attempt. What time of day is your brain sharpest? When do you feel most creative? When are you naturally inclined toward social interaction? These aren't random preferences, they're valuable data about how to optimize your life. Here's something else that took me too long to realize. The quality of your life is determined by the quality of the questions you ask yourself. Most people ask terrible questions like, why does this always happen to me? Why can't I get ahead? Why is life so hard? These questions presuppose that you're a victim and that life is happening to you rather than through you. But what if you ask different questions? What if instead of asking why this happened, you ask what this is teaching you? Instead of asking why you can't do something, you ask what would make it possible. Instead of asking why life is hard, you ask how challenges are helping you grow. The questions you ask literally determine the answers you find. This connects to something that most people never discover about success. It's not about having all the right answers. It's about asking increasingly better questions. The person who asks better questions will always outperform the person who has better answers to the wrong questions. Now, let me share something that might be the most important insight in this entire conversation. Your life is not happening to you, it's responding to you. Every external circumstance is in some way a reflection of your internal state, your beliefs, your expectations, your energy. This isn't mystical thinking. It's practical psychology. When you believe that good things happen to people like you notice opportunities that others miss. When you expect respect, you carry yourself in ways that command respect. When you operate from abundance, you attract abundance. It's not magic, it's pattern recognition. The universe isn't conspiring for or against you, it's responding to the energy you consistently put out. This is why mindset work isn't just feel good philosophy, it's the most practical thing you can do. Your mindset determines what actions feel possible, what opportunities you notice, what risks feel worth taking. Change your mindset, and you literally change what's possible in your life. But here's the thing that trips most people up. Mindset work isn't about positive thinking, it's about accurate thinking. It's about seeing reality clearly rather than through the filters of fear, limiting beliefs, or past conditioning. Sometimes accurate thinking reveals that you've been playing it too safe. Sometimes it reveals that you've been pursuing the wrong goals entirely. The most successful people I know have mastered something that most people never attempt. They've learned to think independently, not rebelliously, not contrarily, but independently. They've stopped outsourcing their thinking to society, to their peer group, to authority figures, and started thinking for themselves. This requires something that our education system never taught us: intellectual courage. The courage to question assumptions, to think thoughts that others might find uncomfortable, to reach conclusions that go against conventional wisdom. Most people never develop this courage because our entire social structure rewards conformity and punishes independent thinking. But here's what independent thinkers understand that conformists don't. The majority is wrong about most things most of the time. If you want extraordinary results, you can't use ordinary thinking. You have to be willing to think thoughts that most people aren't willing to think, to see possibilities that most people can't see. This brings us to something that completely transformed how I approach goals and achievement. Most people set goals based on what they think is realistic given their current circumstances. But this is backward thinking. Your current circumstances are the result of your past thinking and actions. If you want different circumstances, you need different thinking and actions. Instead of setting goals based on your current reality, set goals based on your desired reality and then reverse engineer the thinking and actions required to get there. This isn't delusional, it's strategic. Every major achievement in human history started with someone imagining a reality that didn't yet exist and then working backward from that vision. Here's something else that most people get completely wrong about success. They think it's about working harder, being more disciplined, having more willpower. But the most successful people aren't necessarily more disciplined than others. They've just eliminated the need for discipline through better design. They've designed their environment so that good choices are automatic. They've designed their schedule so that important work happens when their energy is highest. They've designed their social circle so that growth is encouraged rather than discouraged. Discipline is overrated. Design is underrated. This connects to perhaps the most counterintuitive truth about productivity. The secret to getting more done isn't doing more things. It's doing fewer things better. Most people are busy but not productive. They confuse motion with progress, activity with achievement. But productivity isn't about cramming more into your day. It's about identifying what actually moves the needle and eliminating everything else. The most productive people I know have mastered the art of saying no, not just a request from others, but to their own impulses to do everything, to be everywhere, to please everyone. They understand that every yes to something unimportant is a no to something important. Time is finite, attention is finite, energy is finite. Successful people manage these finite resources like investors. Manage money. Now let's talk about something that affects every single area of your life, but that most people never consciously examine: your relationship with failure. Our culture has taught us to fear failure, to avoid it, to see it as evidence that we're not good enough. But this relationship with failure is keeping most people small. Here's what I wish someone had told me 30 years ago. Failure isn't the opposite of success. It's the raw material of success. Every failure contains information that success doesn't provide. When something works, you know what to repeat. When something fails, you know what to avoid or adjust. Both are valuable, but failure often provides more useful data. The people who achieve extraordinary things haven't failed less than others. They failed more. They failed faster, failed cheaper, failed smarter. They've developed what I call failure immunity. The ability to extract lessons from failures without letting failures define them. This immunity is perhaps the most valuable skill you can develop, but failure immunity requires something that most people never cultivate: emotional resilience. Not the ability to avoid difficult emotions, but the ability to experience them without being controlled by them. Most people are emotional slaves, their decisions driven by whatever they happen to be feeling at the moment. But feelings are just information, not instructions. When you develop emotional resilience, you realize that you can feel fear and still take action. You can feel uncertain and still make decisions. You can feel discouraged and still continue forward. Your emotions don't have to drive your behavior. They can simply inform it. This emotional mastery connects to something that most people completely misunderstand about motivation. We've been taught that motivation comes first, then action follows. But this is backward. Action creates motivation far more often than motivation creates action. The way to feel motivated is to start moving, even when you don't feel like it. Most people wait to feel ready, wait to feel motivated, wait to feel confident. But readiness is rarely a feeling. It's a decision. The people who accomplish extraordinary things don't feel ready more often than others. They act despite not feeling ready. They understand that confidence comes from action, not the other way around. Here's something that will completely change how you approach any challenge. The obstacle you're avoiding is probably the exact obstacle you most need to face. We have an uncanny ability to avoid precisely what would help us grow. It's like our unconscious mind knows exactly what we need to develop and then creates elaborate strategies to avoid it. Don't think about the skills you most need to develop for your next level of success. I bet you've been avoiding situations that would force you to develop those exact skills. The presentation you've been putting off might be exactly what you need to develop your communication abilities. The difficult conversation you've been avoiding might be what you need to develop your relationship skills. That our avoidance patterns are actually GPS systems pointing toward our growth edges. The things we resist most strongly are often the things we most need to embrace. This isn't because the universe has a sense of humor, though sometimes it seems like it does. It's because growth always happens at the edge of our comfort zone. Now, let's examine something that secretly controls every decision you make, but that most people never consciously consider: your relationship with time. Most people live as if time is scarce, as if there's never enough. But scarcity, thinking creates scarcity results. When you operate from time scarcity, you make rushed decisions. You prioritize urgent over important. You live in constant stress. But what if time abundance is possible through intention rather than addition? What if the feeling of having enough time comes not from having more hours, but from using your hours more intentionally? The people who feel like they have plenty of time aren't necessarily less busy than others. They're just more aligned with how they spend their time. Here's the time management insight that changed everything for me. Time isn't the problem. Priorities are the problem. When your actions align with your deepest values, time expands. When there's misalignment between what you're doing and what matters most to you, time contracts. It's not about managing time. It's about managing priorities. This brings us to something that most people never master, but that determines the quality of their entire life experience: the ability to be present. We live in a culture of constant distraction, always thinking about the next thing, the next goal, the next achievement. But life is happening right now, and if you're not present for it, you're missing it. Presence isn't just a nice spiritual concept. It's practical mastery. When you're fully present, You make better decisions because you're working with complete information. You have better relationships because people feel truly seen. You experience more satisfaction because you're actually experiencing your experiences rather than thinking about them. Most people live their entire lives slightly removed from their actual experience, always thinking about something else, somewhere else, someone else. But presence is a skill that can be developed. And when you develop it, everything improves. Your work becomes more engaging, your relationships become more meaningful, your challenges become more manageable. Here's something that connects all of this together in a way that might surprise you. The secret to an extraordinary life isn't extraordinary actions, it's ordinary actions done with extraordinary consistency. Most people are looking for the magic bullet, the secret formula, the hidden technique. But the real secret is hidden in plain sight. It's doing simple things consistently over long periods of time. That the challenge is that simple isn't easy. Reading for 30 minutes a day is simple, but doing it every day for a year requires something that most people lack: the ability to find meaning in ordinary moments. We've been conditioned to seek excitement, novelty, stimulation, but mastery comes from finding depth in repetition, significance, and simplicity. This is why most people never master anything. They jump from technique to technique, strategy to strategy, always looking for something new instead of going deeper with what they already know. But depth beats breadth every time. The person who masters one skill will outperform the person who's average at 10 skills. Now let me share something that might be the most practical insight in this entire conversation. Your environment is stronger than your willpower, so stop fighting your environment and start designing it. If you want to eat healthier, don't rely on willpower when you're hungry. Design your kitchen so that healthy choices are the easiest choices. If you want to exercise regularly, don't depend on motivation. Create systems where exercise fits naturally into your routine. If you want to read more, don't battle the temptation to watch TV. Create an environment where books are more accessible than screens. Environment design is the secret weapon that most people never use. This environmental approach applies to more than just physical spaces. Your social environment shapes your thinking. Your digital environment shapes your attention. Your informational environment shapes your beliefs. Most people are incredibly careful about what they put in their bodies, but completely careless about what they put in their minds. Here's the thing about environments: they're always influencing you, whether you're conscious of it or not. The question isn't whether your environment affects you. The question is whether you're designing your environment or letting it design you. Most people are living in environments that were designed by accident, then wondering why they can't seem to make progress toward their goals. Let's talk about relationships, because this might be the most important factor in determining the quality and trajectory of your life. Most people choose their relationships unconsciously, based on proximity, convenience, or familiarity. But your relationships are programming your reality every single day through the conversations you have, the assumptions you share, the possibilities you discuss. You've probably heard that you become the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. But it goes deeper than that. Your peer group doesn't just influence your behavior, it determines what behaviors feel normal to you. If everyone around you is complaining, complaining feels normal. If everyone around you is growing, growth feels normal. This is why it's changing. Your life often requires changing your relationships. Not necessarily ending relationships, but definitely being more intentional about who influences your thinking. The conversations you have most frequently are literally rewiring your brain. Are those conversations expanding your possibilities or constraining them? Here's something that most people never realize about successful relationships. They're not based on compatibility. They're based on commitment. Compatibility is about how well you fit together as you are. Commitment is about how willing you are to grow together into who you're becoming. The best relationships are laboratories for mutual growth, not comfortable resting places. This applies to every type of relationship: business, partnerships, friendships, romantic relationships, even your relationship with yourself. The question isn't whether you're compatible with your current situation. The question is whether you're both committed to growing into something better. Now, let's address something that secretly sabotages most people's efforts to improve their lives. They try to change everything at once. They wake up one Monday morning and decide to completely overhaul their diet, start exercising, begin meditating, learn a new skill, fix their relationships, and reorganize their finances. By Friday, they're overwhelmed and back to their old. Patterns. Real change happens through what I call strategic progression. You identify the one change that would have the biggest positive impact on your life. You implement that change until it becomes automatic. Then you add the next change. It's like learning to play piano. You don't start by trying to play a complex piece. You start with scales and build from there. Most people underestimate how long it takes to make a change stick, and they overestimate how much they can change at once. But the people who transform their lives understand that slow and steady wins every time. They'd rather make one change that lasts than 10 changes that fade away. Here's the insight that ties all of this together. Your life isn't happening to you, it's responding to you. Every choice you make, every thought you think, every action you take is sending a signal to the universe about who you are and what you expect. And the universe responds to that signal with experiences that match your energetic output. This isn't mystical thinking, it's practical psychology. When you operate from confidence, opportunities appear that weren't visible before. When you approach challenges with curiosity rather than fear, solutions emerge that weren't apparent earlier. When you treat yourself with respect, others begin treating you with respect. It's pattern recognition, not magic. But recognizing patterns requires something that most people never develop: the ability to step outside of your own experience and observe it objectively. Most people are so immersed in their drama that they can't see the patterns that create the drama. They're too close to the forest to see the trees. This objective awareness is perhaps the most valuable skill you can develop. When you can observe your own patterns without judgment, you can begin to consciously change them. When you can see your automatic reactions without being controlled by them, you can start choosing your responses. This is the difference between living consciously and living unconsciously. The truth is, most people live unconsciously. They react rather than respond. They follow patterns rather than choose directions. They accept default settings rather than customize their experience. But consciousness is a choice available to everyone. And when you choose consciousness, everything becomes possible. So here's my challenge to you. Don't just consume this as entertainment. Identify the one insight that resonated most deeply and implement it today. Not tomorrow, not next week, today. Because wisdom without implementation isn't wisdom, it's just information. And you already have enough information. The gap between where you are and where you could be isn't knowledge, it's application. The person you're capable of becoming is waiting for you to start becoming them. And the beautiful thing is, you can start right now with whatever circumstances you currently have, wherever you happen to be. Your extraordinary life is not going to arrive fully formed. You're going to create it choice by choice, day by day, through the accumulated power of small, consistent actions aligned with clear intentions. The manual was always there. You just had to be ready to read it. The question is, are you ready to stop living by accident and start living by design? Your future self is counting on your answer.